You've probably heard of them. Shadowy figures who killed from the darkness, who could infiltrate any court, whose mountain fortresses were the stuff of legend. Well, today we're talking about the real story of the group we call the Assassins. And let me tell you, it is way stranger and way more interesting than any video game. We're going to separate the myth from the incredible reality.
Just think about that for a second. How many groups in all of history can say that? That their name, their actual name, became a common word for what they did? It just shows you the kind of impact they had, the kind of mystique, and honestly, the terror they inspired across the entire medieval world.
Okay, so this slide gets right to the heart of it. On one hand, you've got the legend, the Assassin's Creed version, the super cool, shadowy killers. But on the other hand, you have the historical reality, a complex community of religious scholars, a political rebellion fighting for its very survival. The real story is so much more fascinating than the pop culture myth.
So, to really get who these people were, we have to go back. And I mean way back. We're not starting in some hidden training ground. Nope, we're starting with a series of major fundamental splits inside the Islamic world about who should be in charge.
Look at this timeline. It shows you that the group that would become the assassins were a minority. Inside of a minority, inside of another minority. I mean, talk about being the underdog. It all comes to a head in 1094 with the succession crisis that gives birth to the Nizari Ismailis. From day one, they were outnumbered and they were surrounded by enemies.
And this is the guy who made it all happen. This is the mastermind, Hassan-i Sabbah. Forget the cartoonish old man of the mountain legend. This was a brilliant intellectual, a persuasive missionary, and a strategic genius who knew he couldn't win a straight-up war, so he had to invent a whole new way to fight, and a new kind of state.
Which brings us to their famous headquarters. Now, when you hear the word fortress, you're probably picturing some dark, grim, military castle, right? Well, for the Nizaris, these strongholds were something else entirely.
And this number tells you so much of the story. 2,100 meters. That's almost 7,000 feet up. They called Alamut the eagle's nest, and you can see why. It was practically unreachable, the perfect sanctuary to build a society and wage their very unconventional war.
And here's the crucial part, the thing the legends always get wrong. Alamut wasn't just a military base. It was a thriving center of learning. It had one of the greatest libraries of its time, full of scientific and philosophical works. This was a community of scholars, astronomers, and artisans. It really was a fortress for the mind, just as much as it was for the body.
So, you have this reality of a scholarly, isolated community, which clashes completely with the wild stories people have been telling about them for centuries. So now, we get to the really fun part. Let's start tearing those legends apart.
This is the big one, isn't it? It's literally in their name, or so the story goes. The myth of brainwashed killers, high on drugs, promise the ticket to paradise. But is there any truth to it at all?
The short answer? Almost certainly not. Most modern scholars agree that the word Hashashin was basically a slur, propaganda cooked up by their enemies. I mean, think about it logically. Their most elite agents had to be masters of disguise, infiltrating enemy courts for months, even years. They needed razor-sharp focus and discipline. Getting high would be the absolute worst thing you could do.
Now, the story that really poured fuel on this fire comes from the famous traveler, Marco Polo. He told this incredible tale of a secret garden at Alamut, where recruits were drugged, they'd wake up in this paradise with flowing wine and beautiful women, and then they were told, "Die for us, and you'll come back here forever." It's an amazing story.
But that's exactly what it is. Just a story, a rumor. See, Marco Polo passed through this region decades after the Mongols had already burned Alamut to the ground in 1256. He never saw it. He never met a Nizari from that era. He was basically repeating the most sensational gossip he heard on his travels.
So, if the hashish myths are false and their legendary fortresses were destroyed, you'd probably think, well, that's the end of the story, right? But you would be so wrong. What happened next is honestly the most surprising part of this entire history.
Because after Alamut fell, the Nizari Ismaili community didn't just vanish. They scattered, they went underground, and they survived. And over many, many centuries, they transformed. Today, that community is still thriving, and it's led by their spiritual leader, the Aga Khan.
And here is the jaw-dropping twist. That same community, the direct descendants of that medieval sect that was so feared for its targeted killings, now leads one of the biggest and most respected humanitarian organizations on the planet.
Yeah, so instead of daggers, their tools today are schools and hospitals and economic development projects. The Aga Khan Development Network is this massive force for good around the world, and it focuses on the very things that made Alamut special: education, creating opportunities, and building strong, self-reliant communities.
It's just an incredible journey, isn't it? It's a powerful reminder that history is never really over. A group's legacy isn't set in stone. It can change. It can evolve in ways the founders could never, ever have imagined, transforming from a dagger in the dark to a hand that's building a better future.